What is up, my Yu-Gi Bros? I'm your host, the one, the only, the RJB0. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! And Business Casual. Today we are doing Junk Doppel. I'm going to start you off with a fairly quintessential duel with the standard Junk Doppel combo going into a Quasar play, while I answer the question that is probably burning in your mind, which is, I've been talking about how much I love Junk Doppel for years, and yet I have never done a duel video or a deck profile before with the deck. So why today? Well, today I am doing this video in celebration of a good friend of mine making his return to the online Yu-Gi-Oh! Community. I know him as Stephen Eduardo Buchanan. You probably all know him as the Junk Doppel legend, SpeedySteve2448, who, after having his YouTube channel mysteriously deleted, has once again shown up on Facebook making videos with Junk Doppel for his Facebook group, to which I will link you in the description below. So in honor of his returning to the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And to the online Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, I wanted to show you guys the Junk Doppel deck that I have been working with on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro. So here we see a pretty standard set of setup plays for this deck, allowing me to get some draws off that Allure of Darkness. The ultimate goal with this version of the deck really is to get in that basic Junk Doppel combo, where you use Junk Synchron to revive a level 1 tuner from your grave, then summon the Doppel Warrior from your hand, get the Librarian, the 2 tokens, go for Formula, and go off from there. It gets you some crazy advantage, and oftentimes will easily put you in the situation to make a Quasar play, as you will see during the next turn. So I draw into another MST, I go into the standard play, hitting the glow-up bulb from the graveyard, hit the Junk Doppel combo, go for that Librarian, Formula, hits the board, I get 2 draws off of that. Unfortunately, I do not get a quick draw Synchron. One of the big pieces to getting a turn 1 Quasar play off of this deck is getting quick draw into your hand, particularly if you can have a level eater in the graveyard at some point during the turn, which allows you to go into one of your new toys that I really love out of the Synchron Extreme deck, which is Jet Warrior. Jet Warrior is actually a really amazing card, and I'm really glad that the deck got it, because it adds a piece of removal to the deck that doesn't require you to go into a level 8 for that Junk Destroyer. Since you can just drop the level eater off of your quick draw Synchron and then level eat your quick draw and make your Jet Warrior, you can have an easy bounce to your opponent's extra deck or to their hand, and then go in for some damage or destroy by battle. And if you do things correctly, you should end up with a 5, a 2, and a 5 for that Quasar play. My opponent scooped in that duel before I could put the Quasar on the board, but never fear, you will get to see the Mighty Dragon in this duel. As you can see, I really am opening up this game exactly how you want to open it, with a level 1 tuner in the graveyard, with access to Level Eater in your hand. This deck really benefits from the existence of Mathematician, since Mathematician can toss your fuel into the graveyard for this play, which you are about to see right here. Once again, very, very standard play. You go for that Junk Synchron into a level 1, into Doppel Warrior, into the 2 Synchros that allow you to draw 2 cards off of them, and then you can make the rest of your play. Here my opponent slams the Torrential Tribute and forces me to wait for another turn in order to make my big play, but it doesn't actually make a huge difference in my ability to make Quasar because of what I draw into next turn, which is Rush Warrior. Rush Warrior is one of my new favorite cards from the deck, which allows me to make some crazy plays beyond the ones that I was able to make before. Not only can Rush Warrior play the honest game with my Warrior Synchros, for instance my Jet Warrior or my Drill Warrior, it also allows me to recycle tuners from my grave, so I can discard it for my Quick Draw Synchron and then use its effect to add back my Junk Synchron and then make some plays from there, as you saw in that duel. Once again, great plays with Rush Warrior here. Rush Warrior is it's really a game-stealing card, and I'm really glad that I have it in this deck. You're going to see another duel later where basically Rush Warrior wins the game for me. If I didn't have Rush Warrior, I would have been in some serious trouble. Here I'm playing against Melodious for the first of 2 duels in a match. In this duel, I am going to be making Quasar fairly quickly. My opponent doesn't really have an out to it this game. But first, I do decide to go into some Road Warrior plays. I do not have access to Quasar immediately in this game, but I do get to get a ton of draws out of it. And of course, I'm just going to lose that Road Warrior to Honest, which is A-okay because my opponent still doesn't have any plays, particularly in comparison to the 5 cards in hand with a Librarian and a Formula on the board. I considered going for Black Rose, but considering the fact that he couldn't get rid of my TG Librarian, it made more sense to keep my draw power on the board, particularly since it allowed me to go for Quasar this turn. I used that Jet Synchron, which is another one of the MVPs from the Synchron Extreme deck that allows you to extend your plays even further. It not only allows you to search out for Synchro cards, which is amazing, or Synchron cards, sorry, but it also allows you to summon it from your graveyard to make Formula plays and sometimes Jet Warrior plays from your graveyard without having to use another normal summon to get your level 1 on the board. Once again, we open with Mathematician, and this time my opponent is going to get that famous Melodious Soft Lock. If you have this field, your opponent cannot destroy your monsters by battle or target them by card effects. Fortunately, I have that Raigeki. As you can see from this game, even if I didn't have the Raigeki in my opening hand, chances were pretty high that I was going to draw into it, or a card that can get out of this soft lock at some point during this turn. I just draw an incredible amount. Having 3 Formula Synchrons in this deck really gives you a ton of card advantage to work with. As you can see, I'm just drawing so many cards just in this one turn. This has all been in one turn that I've been getting this much draw. I use that Raigeki, go in for the OTK with that shooting Quasar Dragon. So here is a really interesting duel. This is the duel that I talked about where if I didn't have Rush Warrior, I would have lost the game. This is just a great game between Junk Doppel and Yang Zing that really talks to why I love this deck. There are just so many plays that you can make, and you have to make creative plays every time you go through the combo. Even if you're making that standard Junk Doppel combo, you really have to think things through, because in order to make the rest of your play, you have to use the cards that you draw off of your Librarian and off your Formula Synchron, which oftentimes requires you to think a little bit outside the box, particularly if you can't make a Quasar play that turn. If you just leave your Formula and your Librarian on the field that turn, you're probably going to lose it to something next turn. You can, of course, make Black Rose next turn, but it's much more advantageous to make the crazy, wild plays that this deck can make off of your draws. So here you're seeing I'm just making a ton of draw plays, getting massive amounts of card advantage off my opponent, and I have a massive board. As you can see, though, that is not long for this world, since he does have that Dark Hole in hand, but he does give me an extra turn, hoping to set up his graveyard a little bit more for a Yang Zing shenanigans play. I end up with a couple tokens on the board, fairly standard, massive field for this deck. He goes for the Taoshi from his deck, which honestly, once again, if he hadn't been going for Taoshi repeatedly and putting in attack position, I probably would have won this duel, or I probably wouldn't have won this duel. There goes the Dark Hole, I lose everything, but this Soul Charge right here is critical. If he hadn't made the Soul Charge play and only revived one tuner that I could Book a Moon, probably would have lost, but here, he puts himself down to 4,400 life points. I go for the Quick Draw play, Synchro into Drill Warrior, and then hit him with Rush Warrior for 4,800 points of damage for game. Rush Warrior is just an incredible game stealer for this deck. I only run one of it, but really you only need one of it. And then finally, this is my favorite duel out of all of them, because I make probably the most incredible comeback I have ever made in a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Here I start off with a pretty big potential play, but I have to end it early because my opponent goes for Max C, and I really don't want to give him that much card advantage considering the fact that I probably couldn't have OTK'd that turn. But little did I know he was playing Frog Monarchs, and I end up getting my MST stacked by Ryza, and this is where things get really bad for me. I take some damage off of that Ryza, and I draw for turn hoping to get something good. Nope, I get another MST. That is really bad against Frognarks because we're both playing Trapless decks, and MST just really isn't helpful to me. He runs over my Glow Up Bulb with that Ryza, hoping for something good. I get a third MST. I draw 3 MSTs in a row. I get my MST stacked. I am just losing hard to this Monarch player, but next turn I draw everything I need. All I really needed was that tuning, because now I can go into that Junk Doppel play, go for that Librarian, summon the tokens, get the Formula Synchron, get 2 draws off of it, and what do you know? I draw into another Junk Synchron and a Doppel Warrior. The Doppel Warrior allows me to summon itself after I mill for the glow-up bulb, summon some tokens off of a Synchro into my Armades, and then looky there, I have a Quasar play, but that isn't even all I could do that turn. I decide to go for another formula, and at this point, my opponent just decides to scoop because not only do I have a Quasar on the board and the potential to OTK, because of that Mistbird Colossalus dropping his Ryza to 0 and being able to run into that Dandelion, or not that Dandelion, that Treeborn Frog, I can go in for that OTK. I just have so much card advantage. Here's the deck. We start off with, of course, the 3 Junk Synchron and 3 Quick Draw Synchron, the 2 most important cards in the deck because they are the source of all your combos. We've got a couple of level 1s that are very important, some themselves from the grave. You've got Level Eater, which make your quick draw plays, and your new Jet Synchron, which are very important. Doppel Warrior, you have to have 3 in order to get into your hand as quickly as possible. Mathematician is a very good card for this deck if you are focusing on that Junk Doppel combo, because it gets all your level 1s in the graveyard, and you absolutely have to have your level 1s in the graveyard because they start off all your plays, both your Junk Doppel plays and your quick draw plays. Here's that Rush Warrior. Rush Warrior is a great card. It allows you to double the attack of a Warrior Synchro monster during damage calculation. Then you can banish it from your graveyard to add a Synchron from your graveyard to your hand. Makes a lot of really cool extended plays, and also steals games like crazy. We have a Synchron Explorer for some late game plays. Of course, that Glow Up Bulb and Dandelion are fairly safe, but once again, you want access to those level 1s, so you've got 1 for 1. Foolish Burial also gives you some access to level 1s in the grave without using your normal summon. And then you've got your main searchers, your Tuning and your Rhoda. I've got 2 Upstart Goblin to thin the deck a little bit more, and Allure of Darkness for some draw power. Snatch Steal, most broken card of the format. Soul Charge because it makes Quasar. Raigeki because it's Raigeki, Book of Moon because it stops plays, especially against Burning Abyss, 3 MST because that's the format, and 3 Breakthrough Skill because Darklaw and Nekloth Valkyrus are really terrible for this deck. We have 3 Formula Synchrons. This is one of the most important cards to have in your extra deck. I tried it with 2, I tried it with 1, but it's so important to all your plays, especially if you're really focusing on that Junk Doppel play. You really want to have all 3 of them because it gives you the card advantage you need in order to make those extended plays. You've got Mistbird Colossalus, you've got your Excel Synchron, Jet Warrior, Armades, and Hyper Librarian. Really, your level 5 Synchros are the most important cards in your extra deck. They make all of your plays. You've got Drill Warrior to have a level 6. You've got your Junk Berserker and Black Rose Dragon for your 7s. And then you've got a Road Warrior, which makes a lot of cool plays, especially with Stardust Warrior now out. Now, I had to make a slight adjustment because in this version of the deck profile, I didn't have Junk Destroyer, but Junk Destroyer is much more important to this deck than your Shooting Star Dragon, because really, if you put Quasar on the board, you really shouldn't be worried about your opponent getting rid of it, because that's going to happen very rarely. But Junk Destroyer does allow you to make some plays with Quick Draw Synchron without necessarily being able to go into your crazy OTKs with things like Quasar. So that is my version of the deck. It might not even be the best version of the deck because I am not the Junk Doppel master. The guy you want to be checking out for amazing Junk Doppel decks, he plays it the crazy way, the original way where there are just so many plays you can make. You can't just look at a hand and immediately know everything you want to do with it. It is like the opposite of autopilot. That is how SpeedySteve plays it, and I will direct you guys to his Facebook group. Thank you guys for watching. I am your host, the one, the only, the RJB0, and I got a jet. See you guys.